Hello, everyone. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. It's really nice to be back. The last time I visited this conference, it was another conference. It was called JAO in 2007. I actually checked it now, which was a great experience for me. I met Uncle Bob Martin and Martin Fowler, Michael Feathers, a lot of these gurus that I looked up to. You could say it basically acted as a catalyst for my interest going into even more Agile and Agile coaching. And I kind of ripped off Uncle Bob's keynote and took it back to Sweden, where I did my first conference presentation, which was a success. And years later, I would actually see newspaper cutouts of myself in Teams rooms at Ericsson and other companies from that talk. So you could say that JAO helped launch my speaking career. And now I've come full circle, I guess, speaking at that conference. So thank you for that. And the topic of today is Discover Weekly, how Spotify's culture enabled one of our streaming services' most loved features, or an alternative title, how we accidentally fixed Mondays. And I'll get back to that. Just a little bit about me. I'm not going to let it come too much in the way, but my name is Joakim Sunden. I guess here in Denmark, most people know how to pronounce that, which is not the case in the US, where I lived for a couple of years in Boston, where I worked at Spotify. I started at Spotify 2011 when we were around 8 teams, and worked there to 2017 when we were more than 200 teams. And I was part of a group of people who developed a new approach to stay agile at scale as we grew, that was called the Spotify model. We actually did everything we could to not call it that, but that's another story for another conference maybe. So yeah, I'm a father of 4, and this is me and my family trying to fit in the American culture when we lived there. We did so, but I guess Halloween is now all over the world. I also happen to be the co-author of a popular book called Kanban in Action. Also came full circle, I felt, when it was translated into Japanese, that is now available in, and Chinese, or simplified Chinese if Chinese is too tricky for you. Right, so, but I'm here to talk about Discover Weekly. So how many of you know, or how many of you do not know what Spotify is? Please raise your hand if you do not know what Spotify is. Awesome, wow. A music streaming service. How many of you do not know what Discover Weekly is? Wow, some of you, great. So Discover Weekly is a feature in the Spotify app. And you're probably familiar with the concept of playlists. So you could see that we have playlists like Summer Rotation by Joakim Sunden. That's something that I created myself. We have Funk Outta Here by Spotify, something that Spotify created that I chose to follow and listen to. But then all of a sudden, one day, this pops up in users' apps. Discover Weekly, not by me, not by someone else, but made for. What's that? How come? And that's important. We're going to come back to that. So when I click on it, I will get a list of 30 songs that I've never listened to before on Spotify. Maybe I listen to them someplace else. Spotify doesn't know. Not yet. Maybe in the future. Who knows? But let me take you back first a little bit. Do you remember how you used to find music before Spotify? Something like this maybe, browsing a record store. Does anyone know which record store this is? Amoeba Records in Los Angeles, a really big place. So I could spend, well, maybe not hours, but a long time browsing through records and so on, really like this. Some of my friends could spend hours for sure, and really browsing through this collection. If I would go to this store with my mom, she loves music, but she's not that interested in music, if you can tell the difference. So she would rather go to the clothing stores across the road while I would be browsing for CD records or vinyl. And then Spotify came along and did this. Wow, a search box. We can now find all the music in the world quickly through Spotify. And if you, like I did, grew up with Napster and Kazaa, Pirate Bay, these illegal downloading services, pirate music, which actually paved the way for Spotify's success in a sense, but that too is another story for another day. We were used to searching at parties for music, hoping that some peer were connected so we could actually download that album. Maybe the next day we couldn't get a hold of it. It took some time to download. So now when we saw this search box, it was like, wow, this is so exciting. Type anything into it. Oh, they have this and that and that. And all the obscure artists almost that I listened to, they had it. And it started playing immediately. I was so excited. But then, if we take my mom, poor mom, again as an example, she, when I showed her this search box, she wasn't at all that excited. She was like, what do I type? Well, what do you listen to? The Beatles? The Beatles are not on Spotify. We fixed that, by the way, as well. So, okay, but the Rolling Stones, maybe, yeah, let's try that and listen to it. But what for me was exciting and promising and something I wanted to explore and work with was to my mom more intimidating, and she didn't know what to put in there, why she should be putting time into it. So we had basically built a product for us, by us, the case of many startups and scale-ups. So back at the Spotify headquarters, this is our founder and CEO, Daniel Ek. He would say that, wow, great, we nailed search and play, as we call that paradigm. Congratulations, but if you don't know what you want to listen to, our product is useless. Okay, he is exaggerating a little bit, I think, but being too hard on himself. But this is at this time we started talking about, actually we now have millions of users and we have a great product, but if we want to go mainstream, if we really want to reach the billions of people that we think are interested in listening to music, how can we engage these lean back users? They are happy to get served music and served content. They don't want to lean forward and browse through CDs and so on. So that became a quest at Spotify. How can we reach these lean back mainstream users? So one idea was radio. We had that for ages at Spotify, but we tried to improve it. You could choose some genres like jazz or rock. You could choose a decade, 70s jazz, and so on. Some people, found that interesting, but not a lot. Okay, we started experimenting with seeding it with a song or seeding a radio station with a playlist or an album. And based on that, you would get some music that you would like. But still, people didn't find their way into this radio feature. My personal guess is that people who like radio, well, they listen to radio and not necessarily Spotify. So we tried some different approaches. We had something called a news feed for some time. Then we developed Discover, which was a page, Netflix, Pinterest style, recommendations going on forever. Oh, you listened to Of Mice and Men recently. What about, want to try Motionless in White? Have you heard Welcome to Loserville by Son of Dork? Give it a try. And again, our music nerds at the company, they loved this, just browsing and see, oh, this is related to that one, and it just went on forever. But it was not like my mom would get up on Sunday morning and sit in front of the Spotify client and browse through all these things. And even if she did and find an album, once that album is done, it's back to, okay, what should I be listening to now? And we found that users were actually using the browse feature more that we had recently developed, where they could browse through editorial playlists that curators at Spotify had put together. So at this time in the music industry, there were some people actually suggesting, there were lots of music startups trying to do recommendations and machine learning and so on. And some suggested that mainstream lean back users, they are actually not that interested in recommendations. They just want to play same old. And we shouldn't even be focusing on this. There is no market for this. But two engineers at Spotify disagreed. They thought there must be a better way to solve this. They couldn't stop thinking about other ways of doing this. So they came up with an idea, and they said that, okay, let's pitch it to the product manager, product owner, if you want, the team product manager. And he said, yeah, sure, I like it. I like where it's going, but let's do as we usually do and bring in a designer to play the bad cop. And they do that very well. It's like, we're already bloated with features. Why do we need this? Why should we do this? You can't add this. It's not always a great job to be doing, but really necessary. So they also said that actually adding something in the content for user-generated, or the area for user-generated content, that's a big design no-no. So I don't know if you remember, but at this time, Apple Music had recently had a collaboration with U2 and put U2 in everyone's library in Apple Music. It was a huge backlash. People were crazy, like so upset and rage quit Apple Music for months or years. So that was a big no-no. You can't do that. But okay, they sharpened their idea. They went back to the drawing board, but still, yeah, we think that's a good idea. So what they did was basically reconnecting the dots, using already functioning infrastructure and things that were at their disposal. And I don't know if you care much about these things, innovation and so on, but that's typically actually how we see innovation come about. It's repurposing existing technology and solutions to come up with a new solution. That's innovation. It's rarely something entirely out of the blue new thing. So anyone using Discover Weekly here? Okay, you. Great. So this is how it works. Maybe you have a playlist that you put together with, let's say, 20 tracks that you really love. You put a lot of time into curating that list, and it's representing your unique music taste, and you're this unique snowflake. No one will have the same playlist as you do. But of course that's wrong, because we can find probably thousands of people that have listened to the exact same 20 songs, or even have a playlist with these songs. And the interesting thing is that many of them will have more songs. And what if 80% of them have in common 2 or 3 songs that you have never listened to on Spotify? There's a huge chance that you will actually like these songs. So that's basically how it works. It's called collaborative filtering. And we had AI and machine learning and the possibility of grouping songs into micro-genres. We had data from 75 million users at the time. And we had a user interface that people really got. They really understood and loved the playlist. Really straightforward. So I'm going to take a step out of the Discover Weekly story and have some key learning here on the organization that could bring this about. So I don't know if anyone knows of Marty Kagan. He's a Silicon Valley product guru. He was the CPO at eBay, and he has helped lots of different companies in Silicon Valley, startups and so on. He wrote the book Inspired in 2008 about how you do product discovery, which heavily influenced Spotify. He recently came out with the book Empowered, because he realized that even though we've been knowing for like 15 years at least how the great tech companies do it, other companies still don't do it. Why? Because they're not allowed to. So we need to increase the empowerment. And he says that if you're just using your engineers to code, you're only getting about half their value. I've said many times that the best single source for innovation is your engineers, because they're working with the enabling technology every day. So they're in the best position to see what's just now possible. Hopefully this is obvious, but a strong tech-powered product company would no sooner outsource their engineers than they would outsource their CEO. And unfortunately, many of the clients and big companies that I work with have been doing just that, outsourcing their engineers. Or you could say, fortunately they have, because now they realized that's a bad thing. So now I can make money of actually going there and helping them and say, hey, let's insource them. But I'm not that cynical, right? So I'm going to mention Marty a couple of more times, not because he directly influenced Spotify with his thoughts about empowerment, but what he describes in his book is actually how successful product and tech companies do things. And Spotify is one of those companies. It's just that he's put it much more eloquently than I am able to. And also I feel that it brings more evidence to my case that it's not just me, it's not just Spotify. There's a bunch of companies doing these things. Because finding the successful product, you need to understand what's valuable. You need the product management and the business side on things. You need to understand what's usable. So you need product designers, UX, and so on. But you also need to understand what's feasible. How to code, how to fit it with legacy systems, what are the tech trends, what are the intangible aspects that we need to take into consideration. And in the intersection of these three, that's where you find successful products, right? And it's not just that, oh, we need engineering to be involved up front so that we can estimate how expensive this will be, and then we will know if it's feasible. No. The solution and the problem needs to be explored, tightly connected, and together all the time. So these three competences need to be involved at every stage, basically, in a product development. So this means that the product owner or product manager, whatever you want to call it, the person working with the team on what should we be doing, needs to be a collaborative leader and facilitator. And this is a picture that my colleague at Spotify, Jason Yip, used a lot, that I liked. Instead of being a gatekeeper of context, which is the case in many industries and many companies, where you basically have all this product context, the customer context, the product owner talks to them, the designer, it might be even further steps removed from the team actually, but let's say it's like this. They will then translate that context typically into features or specifications or backlog items, and which means that the team of engineers, they never have any contact with what the actual users or customers. So that creates low empathy, low engagement. We're just here to code and ship, basically. Why would we be thinking about how we can solve the recommendation problem and how to reach the lean back people? Instead, we want the product owner, product manager be a facilitator of context. So making the product context, the customer, the user data and so on, much more easily digestible and approachable for the team, so that we together can understand what's the problem we need to solve, what are the signals we are getting, what is working, what's not working. And together we can come up with a solution. So that shifts the role of what the product manager needs to do typically, compared to traditional organizations, for lack of better terms. Okay, this still sounds fluffy. What do I mean by facilitating context? Well, just to give you an example, so this is something that could go on. This is for the taste onboarding feature of Spotify, by the way. So on play day 1, we see some metrics and some data. All these metrics, all this data would be accessible for all the engineers, all the developers, everyone through dashboards. And some people would be like super interested in this, but we couldn't expect all engineers to be that. We couldn't expect all engineers to be spending time on this every day. But the product manager can do that. And they are skilled in interpreting this. They can work together with user researchers or product analysts, data scientists, and figuring out what signals, what is noise, what should we be actually looking for, what are the success metrics we should put up. And they will present it in a summarized, more comprehensible ways, teasing out the signal from the noise. So this is another example. So we see 8 percentage points of registrations drop out in the taste onboarding flow. To improve, we should optimize friction versus taste signals, blah, 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 blah. So it's a description of what are we seeing, what should we be doing, what problems should we be solving. It's not like, okay, I saw this, so I've decided that we should implement that feature. Similar, we would do user research. Maybe the team would be involved, maybe they would watch it on video, maybe a recording afterwards, but maybe they don't have time or that special interest. Okay, the product manager would work together with the product designer, user researcher, highlight what were the most important learnings, what are the key learnings from this interview. Facilitating that context and collaborating. So this means that the team can actually come up with new ideas and choose to pursue them. Again, with Kagan's words, the most important thing is to empower teams by assigning them problems to solve, and then give the teams the space they need to solve them. It's essential that we define success by business results, also known as outcome, and not simply activity or output. Because it's so easy to get sidetracked by focusing on the outputs, because we see things that's not working, customers that are upset, user needs that go unmet, declining results for the business, worse brand recognition maybe. And we get all these ideas. That's great. Oh, we could fix that with this product, this feature, this enhancement. And we start focusing on these things instead. Or even worse, we start focusing on the specifications and requirements. And we kind of lose track on, but this was what we wanted. We wanted to change the outcome. We want to change the world. Because no one asked us to be responsible for those results. They're only thinking things up here, then asking us in the teams or engineers to fulfill the specifications. But we need to be maximizing outcomes and minimizing output, actually. Because the activities, epics, features, stories, tasks, whatever name you use for it, that's just how we believe that we're going to reach these outcomes, these goals. And these are just hypotheses, bets. They have to change if the numbers aren't changing. And these bets have a really low success rate. Probably a third or half of what you have on your roadmap is just not going to work. In Kagan's words, the best teams assume that 2/3 of the backlog, the roadmap, is probably not going to do anything at all or have a negative impact. Experienced teams know this. They just don't know what 2/3 are going to be not working. Ron Kohavi, he ran experimentation on Amazon and Microsoft with the Bing search engine. He's put out this interesting book, but there's a great summary of the book on Harvard Business Review. He says that the vast majority of new ideas fail in experiments. Even experts misjudge which one will pay off. At Google and Bing, only about 10 to 20% of experiments generate positive results. At Microsoft as a whole, only 1/3 prove effective, 1/3 have neutral results, and 1/3 have negative results. So if you're not doing better than Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, probably 1/3 of what you're doing has negative results. And only a limited part of it has actually positive results. So this means we need to move from opinions to data. Instead of thinking we're working on X because Sam, the product manager, said it's important, or Sam, the stakeholder, or the specification says that this is what we should be doing. We're done when Sam is okay with it. We're done when the specification is fulfilled. No. We're working on X because we think it's going to give impact Y, which matters to Spotify because of Z. Or in the words of Google, we need to let data drive decisions, not the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, right? But autonomy, empowerment, doesn't mean that, oh, teams are free to do whatever they want. They should just dream up any innovation they can come up with, and hopefully we'll get good things out at the other end. No, that's a wishful thinking approach. At Spotify, we like to express it as aligned autonomy. Autonomy, empowerment, yes, absolutely. But we also need alignment. There's not a dichotomy here. That's not you could either be aligned or you could be autonomous. You could actually be both, and you could be neither. So if you have low alignment and low autonomy, well, you have an indifferent culture. No one knows where we're headed. There's no sense of direction. We don't have any autonomy and empowerment to choose what we should be doing, so we need micromanagement to actually get anywhere. If we have high alignment, well, an authoritative organization, conformist culture, so we're all able to head in one direction, just follow the orders, march to the sound of the manager. And it says, develop, discover, or as we used to have in this picture, build a bridge. It's focus on the implementation and solution. So in the Discover Weekly case, the manager would be saying, this is the feature that you should be developing. Keep working on Discover. The Discover page, the Netflix, Pinterest style one. And that was actually the team's assignment, or their mission focus. On the other hand, if we are in the top right corner in the consultant matrices, this is always where we want to be, right? The top right corner. So we have an innovative organization and a collaborative culture that's made possible by alignment. If we can agree on the direction, we need to reach mainstream lean back users. We understand the vision, the direction, and the insights that will help us get there. Then you can figure out how. And we are transparent with the information and let teams collaborate to get there and create a collaborative culture. The Spotify struggle for a long time was to not end up in this corner. Entrepreneurial organization for sure, but a very chaotic culture, which is signified by the manager saying, hope someone is working on this lean back problem, but who knows. So another way of viewing it is in the traditional organizations that probably many of you unfortunately know far too well. We have, management has an idea at the top on what we should be doing, but they don't have any measurements. They have no ways of actually assessing, are we getting there? They might not even be clear on what should be accomplished. It's just a lot of features and ideas and so on. And they feel that the only way they can control things is by long-term projects, detailed budgets, toll gates, middle management. They're not asked to focus on results. They're just, are we following the plan? Are we allocating our resources in the right way? Are we delivering on plan? The collaboration is hard because it's temporary project teams in different parts of the organization that's not built to really collaborate. And there are no direct feedback loops because there's no real information to be sending back to the top other than are we on budget, are we on scope, are we on plan? In the aligned autonomy organization, we would have small, long-lived teams, self-organizing, working towards goals, using feedback loops that we actually can know, are we getting there, are we getting closer? By talking to users, doing real customer research, or even better, watching data from running A/B tests and so on. And management can then focus on vision and goals. What is the strategic context? How can we be servant leaders, removing obstacles for the squads? And we have transparent information flowing in both ways. So what's discovered daily on the team level is actually flowing up to the top, informing new strategy, shaping the strategy for next quarter. Okay, that's a sidetrack. So let's get back to the Discover Weekly example, where we have this then main focus for the Discover team to build this Discover page and do recommendations with music. But because they know the mission, we are all about engaging lean back users. That's the current strategy for the company. And they actually have metrics in place to find out, are we successful? Are we reaching people with our features? Are we engaging them? That's depth. Are they using our feature a lot? Do we retain them? Are they coming back week after week to actually use our features? That gives them the opportunity to actually come up with their own ideas. If they don't see any push in these metrics, okay, we need to try other things. So they did, and they started iterating on this Discover Weekly idea. Had to throw some of them away. They spent a few weeks. They just took some sidetrack off of the main focus to explore this idea. The designer, the product manager, and 2 engineers. And the team started using it, and they thought, wow, this is cool, really awesome. We just one more thing though, and they kept tweaking it and tweaking it. Experimented a lot, trying to find out, okay, what can we do? How can we improve it? What should the cover art look like? Well, they started with an astronaut on the moon, like Discover for everyone. But then someone had the idea that, what about me, but with cool colors? Because we have a Facebook integration, so we could actually access personal pictures of the user and overlay them with the logo and some cool colors. Because that's the oldest trick in the book, to get someone to click on it. Oh, that's me, that's my picture, I recognize that, me. But we didn't know, right? We could guess that they would do that. And we didn't have the infrastructure in place to actually retrieve all the images. It's computationally expensive to do it with 75 million users, check every week that if their pictures have updated, do a new overlay and so on. So was it worth it? Well, let's try it. So we actually did it manually, tested it through an A/B test. If you don't know what an A/B test is, you're rolling out a small change to maybe 1% of the users and see how they react. So in this case, some people got the picture of them, and the others got the man on the moon, the generic picture. And we saw 10% lift in weekly average usage, which is huge in these cases, if you didn't know. So we do it. Let's do it. What's the right length? So Spotify has a tradition of looking a lot on quantitative metrics. How are they shifting behaviors? How are they doing differently? And we had under-indexed or under-invested on qualitative user research, but this was now starting to fix itself. Discover Weekly was one of the first teams using it really successfully. So, let's do 4 hours, said all the music nerds at the company, of course. But yeah, no, actually 2 hours seems to be a good fit. Because if you want people to reasonably believe that, we created this list with 30 songs that you will love, or at least pretty much like most of them, they can't believe that. If it's like 100, it's like, do I even like 100 different songs in my life? So it wasn't believable. And that we found out through interviewing actual users. because looking at the data is not enough. It's a great way of doing things, but if you don't also talk to people, you won't understand why is this happening or what's at stake here. How often should it be updated? Every day, several times a day, said the music nerds. No, every week seemed to be enough that people would want to keep coming back. Because if it's daily, it turned out that people will, oh, I missed it today, why bother? But every week there was, this sense of a scheduled release that I would want to not miss out on. If we get it wrong, should we err on the side of making a too unfamiliar recommendation or a too familiar? We didn't want to play it too safe, because you would end up with recommendations such as, oh, you listen to Beatles when I'm 64, you should listen to A Day in Life on the same album, but you probably heard it, even if you haven't listened to it at Spotify. So we didn't want to make too safe bets, because it's discovery, right? But we also accidentally found out in testing, we had a bug that slipped into production that was actually a song that you listened to fairly recently, one or two, or an artist, or a song, ended up on the Discover Weekly playlist, which was considered a bug, because that's not what Discover Weekly is about. But we looked at the data and saw that people engaged more with those playlists. Again, qualitative analysis gave us that, oh, but now I trust it, because I recognize that song and that song, so I trust the recommendations more, which makes me more willing to engage with the list. And without doing this qualitative and quantitative analysis, the team not having access, if we wouldn't have access to data and the users, we would probably not have made these realizations or discoveries. Yeah, and then there were some content mishaps. People still to this day complain that they get Danish music in Sweden, or Norwegian music, or Finnish music even. I don't know, maybe it's a guilty pleasure that they don't want to own up to. So we had a winning formula. 2 hours of personalized music recommendations, refreshed every Monday morning, delivered in a standard Spotify playlist. No need to build any new features or anything like that, or new UI, UX. The playlist image based on the user's Facebook account. So really, no front-end development needed, 100% data informed. Let's roll it out. Or, well, let's do with the employees first, right? Let's check. So, and this team actually took another approach. We usually do, okay, employee test, please test this feature. We want to know about this and this and that. But they just put it out there in the root catalog of everyone at Spotify, and saw it go viral internally. People started picking it up. This is actually weekly average usage, week-over-week retention, 80%, 70%. People are coming back. That's really, really good. And they're really engaging as well. So it was fun for the team to actually watch it go viral at Spotify without having announced anything. But they decided to do a proper employee release eventually. They used the playlist description in a novel way, realizing, oh, we can actually put a URL here. So let's use a Google form. And if people find it, they will give us feedback. Or we ask them, actually. So the rest of Spotify started using it, loving it, giving feedback, more iterating. So, what's this? Wow, awesome, release it. It's as if my secret music twin put it together. Everything in it is good. And the awesome survey results came in, and we knew, okay, we have a hit. Or is it just the music nerds at Spotify who's loving this? So now what? Well, our CTO has said that a team should be able to ship anything to 5% of users. No questions asked. You don't have to ask permission or anything. Just do it. Because from the top, we believed in this type of culture. Again, Daniel Ek, one of the founders and the CEO, he used to say this a lot. We aim to make mistakes faster than anyone else, which seems, stupid, taken out of context. But of course, it's about learning faster than anyone else, making it possible to do mistakes, to learn in the small and fail fast and all that. So we worked on the culture of actually celebrating failure. We want innovation. We want people to take risks. So we published blog posts on how we shot ourselves in the foot, stories from, I went to lunch and then when I came back the server was down. The CTO wrote about celebrating failure. If not an X% of what you're doing is failing, you're not innovating enough and so on. And teams also started putting up spontaneously these fail walls where they describe, this is a mistake I did, and this is what I learned. You know, the idea is that fail is first attempt in learning, that acronym, right? But it's not just about creating this soft side, the culture of it, but also making it possible to contain the failures and to make them really small. If you're working for years with hundreds of people on a project and then release it and it fails, it's catastrophic. So how can we make sure that it's small? So we would have a decoupled architecture with microservices. So if album art blows up, well, the music will still be playing. If notifications blows up, well, you won't get spammed, but the music will still be playing. And of course, gradual rollout, possibility to do A/B testing. If something blows up, we can roll it back, or try to fix it before even more things blow up, and quickly be able to roll it back and contain the damage. So, great. If we can do that, let's do 1%. We're modest. Let's try with 1%. That's it was actually 1.5%, 1 million users. Will the rest of the world like it? We'll find out. And watching the data, it was awesome. We actually kept the link to the Google form, and people were starting to comment, and only 2 of the comments were mentioning this whole U2 debacle, and they were still happy with Discover Weekly. They weren't complaining at all. So it turned out that the designer's concern was unfounded. Again, no shadow on the designer. It's their job to be a little bit skeptical, right? So watching the buzz on Twitter, it's scary how well Spotify Discover Weekly playlists know me. Like former lover who lived through a near-death experience with me well. Or, at this point, Spotify's Discover Weekly knows me so well that if it proposed, I'd say yes. Discover Weekly on Spotify eliminates the need for a musically knowledgeable boyfriend. Now I can be single forever. Yeah, so the buzz was really amazing. So we felt, wow, we really have a winner here. Great. But there's just one problem. It didn't scale. Spotify was a single user, 75 million playlists, and they changed every week on the same day. And then also, having to take into consideration time zone differences and so on, and releasing a playlist. We just didn't have the infrastructure for it. So it broke. And we had to undeploy, roll it back. Just like that, my Spotify Discover Weekly playlist was taken from me. I'm in mourning. I hope it returns soon. Like Twitter exploded with this negative comments on that it was gone. But now we knew that we had a hit. And actually, the team had been cautioned and said, no, you shouldn't be doing this. You can't use the playlist system like that. You'll have to wait. There's a project on the horizon, somewhere out. We've been talking about it for years to rebuild it, but you can't use it like that, and it's just not possible. You shouldn't do it. But now we knew we have a winner, so it's actually worth it. And it took us a couple of months and several teams involved to sort all of these issues. But they also paved the way for other teams to experiment with similar things that we had wanted to do, but we had been pushing it off because it was too expensive. So we gradually rolled it out again. We tweaked the marketing message. So we used the user's own language in the launch. So we could bring in translators, polish it up a lot. But A/B testing actually showed that this was a bad idea. So if you're a Swede or a Dane for that matter, and you might have seen your own language name on Discover Weekly for some time, but then it changed back. So now it's Discover Weekly all over, because that engaged people more. And in qualitative analysis, we found that it was now considered more of a brand in its own, really. So we changed it back. We used Twitter in our marketing, the nice Twitter language. Yeah, polished it up, tweaked it, the package a little bit. And it was a success. Discover Weekly reached 1 billion tracks streamed in 10 weeks, which is huge. The biggest launch that Spotify has ever done. And looking at Twitter, Monday mornings, I take a bath and listen to Discover Weekly. Got really excited and started crying a little because I realized tomorrow is Monday and Spotify is making me a new Discover Weekly. It's actually so sad how excited I get for a new Discover Weekly on Spotify every Monday. Hence our claim that we accidentally saved Mondays. Mondays used to be a day you dreaded going to work and all of this, or school or whatever, but now you're looking forward to it because it's Discover Weekly is out. we're glad we could help. So, and this one is fun. Okay, everyone is right. Discover Weekly is absolutely perfect. And this is funny because this is the co-creator of Pandora, Spotify's biggest competitor in the American market at the time. So everyone loved it. Okay, so concluding, we believe that ingredients of successful innovation is that you put people and clearly defined problems into a fail-friendly environment with cross-functional teams, where it's okay to throw things away and fail as long as you learn. And you do that by having clear success metrics, a feedback infrastructure with user testing and feedback loops, and enough slack to actually try out different ideas. And then awesome new stuff will come out at the end of the machine. So, but don't take my word for it. I've actually been telling this story in internal courses, or public courses for that matter, that I'm doing. I should probably have added a slide with a sales plug for that, but I do a 2-day course called Agile at Scale, inspired by Spotify, and I've used this story as part of that. And then Daniel went in an interview, one of his rare longer ones in Fast Company, and they said, "You've had some pretty successful customer rollouts, like the Discover Weekly personalized playlist." Yeah, I would have killed that if it was just me, 100%. Why would you have killed it? Well, I never really saw the beauty of it. I questioned them 2-3 times. Are you sure you really want to do this? Why are we spending all this time and energy? For a while, we didn't give the team any more funding in terms of headcount, but they kept working on it anyway. All of a sudden, they shipped it. I remember reading about it in the press. I thought, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And then, obviously, it turned out to be something really successful. It's one of the most loved product features that we have. There are lots of things in the company I didn't think were good ideas that turned into some of the best things, and then he goes on to list other good things. And this is, I believe, key here in the message. Even when the CEO wanted to kill it, the architects, the senior engineers said, "You can't do this, you should not do it." The designer said, "This is a bad idea." It didn't matter, because the team were empowered. If they believed in an idea and they actually had the tools to test it, it's about the best idea winning out, because they could actually prove every step of the way that this is going to be a success. It didn't matter what the hippo, the really big hippo, were thinking about it. Data informed. So innovation can't be forced, just enabled and encouraged and supported. Managers cannot make innovation happen, but they can create an environment to support it and stop it from being killed. Thank you. That was all.